Hi there guys. In this video we're going to have a look at some 7.62 by 54 rimmed hunting ammunition. This is a 180 grain Softpoint boat tail bullet, and it is loaded by the Prvi Partizan company. Now this particular box which I have here is an old box. You can see it's got the old style packaging, and in fact it's so old that it actually says made in Yugoslavia. The newer style boxes look a bit more like this one, although this is from a different loading, but they look pretty much like this. And they're loaded in Serbia. Same factory, just after some of the changes in that part of the world. The name of the country got kind of changed around a bit there back a few years ago. So we're going to have a look at this ammunition. We're going to pull a bit of it apart. We're going to show you what's in it, weigh the components, weigh the powder charges, weigh the bullets. We're going to chronograph some ammunition, and then we're going to do a test fire of this ammunition as well, and we'll show you what it can do. So, but the only thing that we can't demonstrate in this video is actually how it would perform on a game animal, because I don't have any moose or anything around here to try this out on. But anyway, the next thing we're going to look at, we're going to show you some of the pulled apart ammunition, and we're going to show you what the guts of that look like. Alright, using my trusty old Midway impact bullet puller, I pulled apart 10 rounds of this 180 grain ammunition, and I thought I'd show you the bullet as it came out of the case first. And you'll notice that there is some black tarry substance on the bullet, and that is an asphalt seal, and it's also inside the case necks as well. I'm not sure how well that will show up, but the asphalt seal is waterproofing the junction of the case neck to the bullet, much in the manner of a military loaded round. So I thought I'd show you that first, because I'm going to use some solvent to remove that tar off the bullets before I weigh them, because I don't want that to affect the weighing process, because differing amounts of that asphalt stuck to the bullets depending upon how they come out of the case. So I'm going to wipe all that stuff off the bullets first, and then we'll not only weigh them, we'll also measure them for diameter as well once I've cleaned that tar off them. I've got 10 bullets pulled from this ammunition, and let's have a look at them. They are a boat tail, not a very extreme style of boat tail, fairly mild boat tail to it, and not a real steep curve to the ogive. So this would not be a really high BC bullet. I'm not sure what it is, but I can't imagine it being a very high BC with that rather blunt shape. However, it would fly better at distance than it would if it was a plain flat base. So you can see we've got a cantilure in the bullet there for the cartridge case to crimp into. This appears to have been lathe cut almost. It's quite sharp. It doesn't look like a pressed in one to me. And we've got a solid base, of course, because it's a soft point. There's a fair amount of lead exposed at the tip there, which should promote expansion. Let's have a look at the diameter of the bullet. Always interesting with 7.62 by 54 ammunition, because it can vary quite a bit. So we'll measure it down here on the primary bearing surface, and we get about 310.5 thereabouts. Measured in a couple of spots there. 310.5, and that's about what these. I measured a bunch of these, and they seem to be pretty much all right about 310.5, which is perhaps 1 thou or 5 thou bigger than some bullets loaded in this type of ammunition, and 5 thou smaller than others. So you can usually see a range of 310 to 311 in most 7.62 by 54 ammo, although there are a couple of makers who actually load a 308 diameter bullet or a 309. So we've got it measured up here ahead of the cantilure, and we got about 310 there, so it seems to be a little touch smaller out front. So I weighed 10 of these bullets on my Lyman scale here, And I come up with some numbers for you, whether they're of interest to you or not, but the average weight of these bullets was 180.5 grains. The extreme spread between the heaviest and the lightest of the 10 bullets was 0.9 of a grain, and we had a standard deviation of 0.36 of a grain. So that's fairly reasonable for a soft point hunting type bullet. We have to keep in mind that this is not a match bullet, it is a hunting bullet, and that should be quite sufficient for the purpose. So next we're going to move on to weighing some powder charges, and we'll get back to you after I've got the 10 powder charges weighed out. We'll do some math on those as well. Alright, I finished weighing the 10 powder charges, and before I dump a charge out, I figured I'd just show you how far up in the case it fills. If you can see that, hopefully. A little bit of light on it there. The powder charges come up just below the junction of the case neck. It's probably actually right almost to the base of the right there where the case body starts and the neck kind of ends. So it's an extruded powder. We'll pour it out in the scale pan here. We'll have a look at it. And it's an extruded powder, kind of an IMR extruded type powder. Give you a good close look at it. And the powder charges were pretty darn uniform over the 10. We ended up with an average weight of 48.3 grains, standard deviation of 0.1 of a grain, and an extreme spread of 0.3 of a grain over the 10 charges. So that's pretty good uniform powder charging. And the last component we're going to have a look at is the cartridge case itself. I mentioned earlier that there was some asphalt sealant on these. You can see it stuck to the inside of the case there, some of that asphalt clinging to the inside of the cartridge case. And that's a good waterproofer, should keep the ammunition quite weather resistant. And also in kind of the line of keeping things weatherproof and watertight, we've also got this, I would assume it's a lacquer sealant around the primer here. And being older production, these have the Cyrillic lettering on them. They say this is Cyrillic PPU. Current production ammunition is actually marked with PPU on it. They don't use the Cyrillic lettering, at least not for the North American market stuff. And we've got the caliber designation there on it, 7.62 by 54R. And this has got the typical rim on these, which is beveled on the back, which is supposed to help prevent rim lock to some degree. Rims that get caught on one another will, in theory, they will slip over one another. And the brass has no undercut, so it's just the rim, straight rim, and it doesn't have any undercut right at the very base. And we've got, you can see the annealing here, the heat treating of the brass, which is shows up this change in color here. And that's something you don't usually see on North American ammo, because generally it is done on North American ammunition. However, they polish it quite a bit afterwards, and it seems that the Europeans polish the brass and then do the annealing afterwards, and that kind of preserves the color change. So it's always I always kind of like to see that. It kind of shows some of the craftsmanship that went into making a cartridge case. And last but not least, while we're on the topic of the brass cartridge cases, is the fact that these cartridge cases are boxer primed and reloadable. Here's a fired cartridge case, and you can see here it's got a boxer primer pocket, and there is no crimped in primer crimp, so these are just quite easy to reload. Simply run them through your standard reloading dies and reprime them with standard large rifle primers, and away you go. So real good brass for reloading. I have reloaded some of this brass upwards of 20 times, and it's still going strong. So good brass, perhaps not quite as good a quality as Lapua, but certainly much better quality than cellular and below brass, and certainly a good value too, because this stuff, you can buy the loaded ammunition for basically the same price per round as Lapua brass costs empty. So You not only get the brass when you're finished, you get to shoot it at least once. So good stuff. Let's move on to a little bit of footage I took at the range. I did a range test with this ammunition, and I used my 9130 Mosin Nagant sniper rifle because that is probably the most accurate Mosin that I own. And I did some range testing, as I mentioned, for groups and also a little bit of chronographing as well. So we'll review those results in the next few clips.
Say you're on. Huh? Say you're on. Yeah, I didn't shoot target. I just thought I took a guess. I will shoot one on target though, just to see. But there is, that bottle is a little bigger.
Of 180 grain Prvi hunting Softpoint ammunition at 300 yards, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're looking at about 8 inches thereabouts at 300 yards, with probably about 3-inch, 2.5 to 3-inch height. And I was aiming down here with the sight set to the 200-meter position, but these things seem to shoot high with heavy bullets.
Don't have to go see.
Okay, a second 5-round group with the 180 gram Prvi hunting ammo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once again, this is from 300 yards. And we've got an almost duplication of the first group. I moved the sights down a little bit, so we've got about a little bit smaller, probably 7.5 inches this time. I guess I'll finish off by summarizing the chronograph readings. I did fire 10 shots over the chronograph, however only 9 of them registered. I guess probably the light levels were a little off that day. But anyway, of 9 shots, we had an average of 2,591 feet per second, with a standard deviation of 20 feet per second, and an extreme spread between the highest and lowest speed shots registered of 54 feet per second. So that's a pretty respectable performance with a 180 grain bullet. And overall, I'd say this is pretty decent ammunition. It performed quite uniformly and with pretty reasonable accuracy, considering the fact that I did actually test it at 300 yards rather than the usual 100 yards. I didn't mean to get out and test it at 100 yards, but I just never got around to it. So, you know, basically you should get groups that are at least a third that large at 100 yards. Probably smaller than that, actually, because of the wind comes into play a little bit more. And as you will have noticed with the group sizes, the groups were wider than they were tall, so that might have been more a wind issue than an actual group dispersal type issue. Anyway, good ammunition and a pretty good value, as are most of the Prvi cartridges. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We may do some more Prvi 7.62 54 ammo tests in the future, so stay tuned for those.